I'm Dennison. I'd like to welcome you to our second episode of Change Yourself, Change Your World. Today we will be talking about the politics of power. It's not going to be a pleasant subject for any of us because we're in the middle of an election season here in the United States, and it seems like nobody can agree upon anything. And again, that's the situation that we have throughout the rest of the world too, is that no one can agree on anything. So we are all breaking up into these little splitter groups of our own individual perspectives. We're banding together with others like ourselves, and we're fighting against anything that opposes us. And you will see this in the politics of the United States right now, but I assume we're seeing it elsewhere around the world too, that there's a tremendous polarization that's been occurring over the last couple of decades, or actually several decades, but it's continuing to accelerate. And it is this polarization that is contributing to the animosity that the sides are feeling, because nobody wants to agree with anyone else. No one wants to give in or concede that somebody else's way may be better or needs to be implemented in terms of the solution. That's because the system that is set up, whether it's here in the United States or anywhere else, we are a hierarchical species. We tend to seem to want people to rule us, and we want to live under systems that where there is this aggrandizement of power in some sort of a central ruling authority. Here in the United States, our situation is really one of, supposedly we're a democracy, but in truth we're a republic. We elect the people that are going to go into Washington to make decisions for us. Perhaps it was because they felt democracy was unwieldy, or at the time because we didn't have any of the technology that we're dealing with now, or that they didn't trust the people. But power resides or is given through our vote to those that we elect to carry out our affairs for us. In this situation, again, we have our legislators and we have our president, which is the head of the executive branch. And so we are inherently giving them power. Now, if you look at the course of the past couple of centuries in the United States, it's been one continual process of building power, going back to the days of John Marshall, with was one of our first chief justices. The Supreme Court began ruling for every question that was coming up. It was ruling in favor of the power of this new democracy, of this new republic that was being formed, so that the national government, which was not granted very many extensive powers, had to carve out its own and create its own power. Well, this process of the federal government creating its own power has continued ever since. That process of government power in a centralized national government resulted in the Civil War, because there were differing views within the country over numerous issues, the greatest of which was probably slavery, the second of which was probably the economic rules that were being imposed upon the South by the northern industrialists who were trying to control the natural resources and farms of the South. And so they were trying to use the government to assert their will over the people in the South. Well, we know how that war turned out. The government won, and continued to grow. And since the war was over in 1864, it's continued to grow even more ever since. And to the point, it's just been accelerating. Now our federal government has gone from what was originally a small govern least is best approach that was established by our founding fathers, to one where we have endowed this government with so much power that it's able to do pretty much anything it wants. And there is no significant checks or balances on it. Congress is locked up. They are unable to do anything to accomplish anything of significance. And when they do, they usually screw it up. All they do is fight. They don't agree because we have become so polarized, and we have allowed them to seize control of our election apparatus so that they can gerrymander districts in order to make sure that they remain in power. Each party carves out its own little spaces of its own voters so that it can ensure that its people are elected each time. Well, this government, we've given more and more and more power to. But it's not just that we've given it, it takes it. We see its influence everywhere. We've built this massive army that is spreading its wings and asserting itself all over the world. And it's not the Army's fault, it's the people in Washington that are sending it out to battle, who have decided that this power that has been amassed in this central government is not to be used for the purposes of what we've set it up for. It's to be used for other purposes. It's advancing our national interests is a big one that they threw out now, or protecting our national interests. In the case of the Middle East, supposedly it's a matter that we can go into the Middle East and create turmoil over there in the idea of protecting oil supplies that the rest of the world needs. Well, certainly there's a reason to have those things, and there's a reason to be interested in ensuring the adequate and free flow of fuel or energy supplies throughout the world so that everyone has the opportunity. But the situation that we've gone into is that this big power structure has become so attractive to those who want to use it for their own ends that that's all they can think of, is to how can we manipulate the system? How can we seize control of the system to do what we want with it? And it is this idea of taking a power source, which is the role of government, is where we grant it to it certain powers to conduct our certain affairs for us. But in the process of conducting those affairs, it amasses more powers, like surveillance, where it's watching over us through cameras and monitoring our emails and our phone calls. George Orwell was correct. 1984 is here. It came a couple of years later, but it is here. We have a government that watches over us, or has the capacity to watch over just about everything we do. May not do so, but they have the power to do so. They have the technology. They have the ability to do so. They have the ability to set policies that will favor one group over another. And is it any wonder that those groups would be fighting in order to make sure that the person that goes into office is going to use that power in a way that's going to benefit them? Well, every special interest is like this. Now, this is what's behind our elections now, and our election and the Brexit elections that just took place a little while back in England, actually in the United Kingdom. I'm sorry, I'm still on a old school nomenclature for your nation. I'm sorry for my friends from the UK. But the Brexit vote was, again, a power structure. It was who was going to hold the reins of power. Again, this is what is happening. We've created this attractive nuisance here or not just here in Washington, but in the different seats of power around the world. And then we set up systems that allow people to fight each other to get that power and to make promises and buy off aspects of the people as necessary to use it and get it. Power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. And to be honest, I always learned it was Voltaire, and I've been told in recent years that it wasn't Voltaire who said that, but well, Voltaire works for me. And if you would like to put the correct name in that I don't know, Lord something or other, in the notes below. It would be very helpful for me, so you could at least educate me as to who it was that did that quote. But again, the point is that power turns whoever holds it into something other than what they were. It acts upon these inner processes within them that makes them want to use that power and to justify it and to defend it and to assert it. Power rarely just sits there. No one wants to just go into office and say, well, we're going to take this power, we're going to leave it there, we're not going to do anything with it. We're not going to implement policies. We're not going to expand our government. We're not going to tax and take more money. We're not going to use our armies. People don't say that when they go into office. They say, I'm going to start this program. I'm going to go over here and do this. And now the conversation is what to do with ISIS in the Middle East. And before ISIS, it was in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it wasn't so long ago that we were hearing threats about going to the Congo and Rwanda and places in Africa because of what the horrors we were doing there. And we sent troops in some of the cases, in some of the cases we didn't. But these hot spots develop all over the world. And usually they are the result of power games being played by the people at the top in these various enclaves of international power. We'll call them each the national or the states that are involved. And the states would be each of the countries. Well, power now is changing and shifting, where those who are in power are saying, well, how can we get more of it? And how can we neutralize the power of others? And this is what's happening with the TPP that's going on, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a new trade agreement that's being set up to try to neutralize China's influence in the world economy and to establish rules by which a centralized corporatocracy can operate within the framework of international government without having as many restrictions as they have now. So it's trying to make business easier, but also they're trying to do it in a way which is to keep from the people that have to approve this the facts of what exactly they're handing over. So we're trying to, so what's happening and what we're seeing here in these power games, we're seeing here this globalist versus this national movement that's happening, where people are fighting to say, well, who's going to have the power over our affairs? In our current election cycle, we have Hillary Clinton for the Democrats and Donald Trump for the Republicans, and Jill Stein for the Green Party, and Gary Johnson for the Libertarians. And those are the four candidates that are on the ballot throughout most of the states. Those four candidates have different views on power. But the two primary candidates, Clinton and Trump, are very specific in the approach that they want to have and how the power is used. Clinton is more of a globalist. Is that she is part of this neoliberal agenda to assert our influence and power around the world. And as Secretary of State, she did that, went by sending arms throughout the Middle East, and in fact arming the conflict that is now being fought. She has engaged in more arms sales during her tenure than any other Secretary of State before. And this is not to bash Hillary Clinton, nor even to talk about the very many issues of corruption and influence of her decisions while she was Secretary of State, or those efforts that were trying to be used, and all the nefarious activities going on between her and the Democratic Party and the Clinton Foundation. These are all aspects that we could talk about, but you're going to see this all over the news. You don't need me to go into all of that for you. The issue here, though, is power. It is who is controlling the power. The Clintons have been at the center of this power game, or this power world, for about 30 years now, since Bill took office in 1992. And during the first Clinton go-round in the 90s, we were having the benefit of this great technology boom. So he was doing very well, but he was doing very well economically for the country with that. And but Clinton, in cahoots with a congressional caucus run by Republicans, or Congress run by Republicans, passed through Glass-Steagall. They repealed Glass-Steagall, which in effect shifted power back to the banks who had been regulated to keep from being able to combine their banking and insurance activities with their investment activities. Investment activities being inherently speculative, they didn't want the idea before in the 30s when Glass-Steagall was passed was that they should not have the ability to commingle and take the risk associated with those investments and pass it over to the banking sector and thereby endanger the public's financial system. Well, that was repealed by Bill Clinton. Okay, of course we forget that. Okay, that's what we've been fighting about, and that's what led us to the crash in 2008, and it is what's led us to the problems that we've had. So many of the problems we've had since then. But anyway, Hillary Clinton is a globalist, and she is part of the same cabal with Obama and others in the administration for the last 8 years to bring us closer and closer to a one world government. This is reflected by a number of the trade deals that they've done where they are moving power away from the national government and moving it to a higher authority. Now they have reasons for this. They believe that some number of the international laws allow some people to abuse the law and to seek benefits by moving their businesses and profits from one jurisdiction to another, and certainly they do. But in their effort to control that, they throw the baby out with the bathwater, and it makes it so that we can't have control over a lot of our own affairs because they have to be decided by somebody extrajudicially, in fact, extra nationally in this international tribunals that will be set up under the TPP, just for one example. On the other hand, so that is sort of a globalist expansion mentality. It's representing, generally speaking, a view within many of us that we're one world, we're one people, and somehow we have to find a way to live together. But they're trying to push it and use that concept to establish that power at the top, which will be even greater than the power amassed here in the United States or any individual country, because they'll start putting more and more and more power into it. The United Nations being one example, but it could be some other form that's set up in front of it. These tribunals are ways that are trying to get around governments altogether. But the movement has been, in one sense, within people trying to take this power and move it up the ladder as far as up and centralize as many, so it can affect as many people as possible. It allows them to take their plans and impact others. Excuse me. But on the flip side, when you start moving jobs around the world to places where there are lower wages, and technology allows lower wages as long as you can educate the workforce to do the jobs necessary to create whatever products are being created, then there's no reason to keep a factory in an area where they have to pay high wages. So this is what's happened over the last 20 years, starting with NAFTA here. It was starting before NAFTA, but NAFTA just accelerated the process. And it took jobs that were here in America, manufacturing jobs and tool and die jobs, and they moved them overseas. And again, it was ostensibly to move it to Mexico, but then through Mexico, went through Mexico and it shifted outwards throughout the rest of the world. Mexico became a doorway through which a number of these other countries would be able to do their operations. So what's happened is we've seen jobs moving overseas in this globalism effort to try to recognize this growing sense that we are one people with a whole lot of differences. But in doing these, they're creating a tremendous amount of dislocation. They're moving people. They're starting their wars in terms to play their games to control that area, this area, or that area, or these resources, or those. And in so doing, they're dislocating many people. They're creating, they're I mean, we all know about the drone strikes and the bombings and all the people that are being killed and the beheadings by ISIS and the Islamic terrorists. It's not an easy situation to go about trying to bring about this sort of international change. And I'm not sure that the way that we're doing it is the right way. Because on the flip side, we give rise to situations which brought about Brexit, the voting to leave, of the Britons to leave the European Union, and what we see here with the Donald Trump candidacy, which is a populist candidacy, which is primarily based upon those who are being left out of power, those who have been ignored or have been abused and have been downtrodden with power. Of course, obviously, he's got a whole lot more issues than that, and I don't think he's looking to give up power. If anything, it looks to me like he's just trying to use it in another way. He's talking about using power to protect America. Okay, he is a protectionist, this is a nationalist versus an internationalist. But again, it's all about where the power goes and how the power is used. The other two candidates, Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, don't seem to have the same approach to power. Now, the Democrats under Hillary Clinton are business as usual, because she's been getting rich. She and Bill have gotten rich off of the politics of power that they've been practicing for the last 30 years. The progressive movement within the Democratic Party, and that has now been taken over by the Green Party of Jill Stein, since Bernie Sanders lost, has been trying to use the power of the federal government to ameliorate the harm that has been coming as a result of the government swinging too far in favor of those who are manipulating it for corporate welfare and control of the money systems and the international affairs and Wall Street. All of those people, all of those efforts have created significant harm to our economy, to the inequality between peoples, the disparity of wealth here in the United States, and has created a system of have and have-nots that I was talking about last week. These have and have-nots, though, it's the have-nots that are coming to fight to get their piece of the pie. They're trying to use the government's powers to restrain those who had abused it before. So in other words, we have the corporatocracy that's buying influence behind the scenes to get government to rule in its favor and stack the deck to benefit individuals or businesses many times over the years. And then you have the progressive movement, which is trying to rein it in. So they're in this continual power game themselves of fighting to see who's going to be able to do it. And that used to be the game between the Republicans and the Democrats. Well, the Democrats have, since the Clintons came in, have moved away from the ones who are looking to return the power to the people. And now they're looking to basically keep the power in the hands of those who are using their money to influence the halls of power. In other words, they serve the bidding of those who are buying them off. But to them, there is no being bought off. They don't see themselves as being corrupt. They don't see the system as wrong. Even because they wrote the rules, they're playing by the rules they wrote. There is absolutely no morality because they don't have any sense of what is right and wrong. They don't understand that when you trade your vote, you are succumbing to playing these power games. You are using power, the power of your vote, and trading that to get something that you want. Well, maybe that's the way politics is a game of this human nature of playing one person's greed against another. But it is this very aspect of human nature which we must begin to change if we are to build a better world. We're not going to be able to continue on the same old way, trying to get for ourselves or use our government to get for ourselves. If we want to stop the games, we want to stop them fighting for influence and asserting their power around the world or over us. We can't keep playing the games ourselves. We can't be looking to get our interests advanced. Because that just puts us in the same situation as them. It's who's going to benefit. It's just a game of to the winner go the spoils, and that's what politics is. To the winner go the spoils. Okay, they pretend to have taken the weapons out of it, but they haven't. They still destroy people. Sometimes they do it violently. Sometimes people disappear or die, like the Democratic National DNC staffer that was killed, assassinated in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago. That this was believed to have been involved in the leak of the DNC email campaign that came out just before the Democratic National Convention. People like this disappear or die suspiciously all the time around the Clintons. But because the poles of power are so closely aligned with them and the people who put them there, they're never held accountable for it. In a very real sense, the people that gravitate toward trying to run our affairs for us have an addiction to power. And some of them use that power to enrich themselves. Some of them use it to enrich the benefactors who put them there. And some of them use it to assert their view of how things should be, whether that view is right or wrong, whether it is good or bad. It doesn't matter, because that's what they want. They're going to use it. And unless there are restraints upon that power within the different systems, they're going to be able to. And we've learned that the public here in the United States is too easily manipulated. Our buttons are too easily pushed to be able to give them the power. They convince us to do so. Like right now, it is a power game going on within our citizenry. Take, for instance, the supporters of Trump and Clinton. They defend them. They ignore the things in their past that would make any sensible person look at them and say, this isn't the kind of person I want to be giving all this power to, much less leading my country into the future. But because they ostensibly support their side, they pick the side and they're a Democrat, or they pick a side and we're a Republican, and therefore they're in our party. We gotta support them, or we have to support Hillary because she's a woman. Okay, and believe me, we probably could use a woman president, but only if a woman came in the office and brought the softer side of the office, and we started seeing the goodness and the caring and the cooperation that we see. But we don't see this coming out of the women that are going into politics these days. These women that are going into politics are just like the men. There's no difference. The politics has corrupted them, and they have reached this place where it's just about power. It's just about power. Hillary has sold her soul to power, and she has sold out the American people to power. Donald Trump, on the other hand, appears to have been selling out to attention and getting more money, obviously through a very successful companies that he's created over the years. Now I know the Democrats want to bash Trump because he's failed in a couple of his ventures, and some people got hurt. But that's not really the reason we should be looking at that. We should be looking at Trump in terms of saying, well, what would you do with the power? How are you going to use this power? And specifically, are you going to be using it to increase the power of the government, or are you going to be using it to reduce the power of the government? I haven't yet heard one candidate or one president say, I'm going to give back the power. I believe that the federal government has too much power and we should return it to the states and to the people. But that's not it. See, because power is intoxicating. They want more because they think they can do good. But in trying to do good, they do harm. They do far more harm than they can imagine. And it's not just what they do in the office. It's the sheer fact that that's business as usual that is corrupting our world and making it so that we are unable to live free, not for free, live free, and create lives without the interference of somebody above us telling us what to do. Now, I haven't talked much about Gary Johnson, and Gary Johnson seems to be less concerned about this power. As a libertarian, he certainly should be, because the libertarian view is that government, less government is better government. For myself, I will tell you, I personally have a strong aversion to anyone who wants to come into office and use the power to increase surveillance over the people, to restrict our freedoms, to oppress us, or to keep us in line, or to assert the power of our government elsewhere around the world. So I guess you would call me I don't even know what the word is. Isolationist. I'm not an isolationist by any means. It's just I believe we have it, so we feel like we have to use it, and that's not the way it should be. To me, peace is what's important, and I don't hear too many people talking about creating peace in the world. What happened to Marianne Williams's suggestion several years ago about creating a Department of Peace in the United States government? A cabinet level position dedicated to peace and coordinated across all the agencies of government. That hasn't gone anywhere. Why doesn't peace go anywhere? Because to use the power that peace brings is much more difficult than to use the power that comes from financial and military might. Peace, to me, is what happens when power is dissolved. When one side quits trying to lord it over somebody else and tell them what to do or impose their will. And I feel a sneeze coming on, so please forgive me here. But we're going to continue until I do, at least. The issue of power again. What is it that you feel about power? Is your view is that you want to take the power of government and do what you want to do with it? So you want to elect people that are going to carry out what you want and fulfill your desires, or try to create circumstances to avoid your fears coming true? Or are you willing to sit back and ride and see what happens and say, okay, well, I'll take that power away from everybody and let's just see what happens. And give people a chance to decide for themselves. Now, this is not ever going to be an A we have power in a central government, or B, we have no power in a central government. It's going to be a question of how do we restrain the power that is put out there, that the ability that they have. How do we ensure that these people will not use the power to their own benefit, to the benefit of their benefactors, to the benefit of their followers, to the detriment of others? Because if you're creating a system with power, you have to understand that that system and that power is going to be used in favor of some and against others. And so we're always again in a situation of haves and have-nots, pitting one side against another. And the politics of power are such that those who run for office are going to say and do whatever they need to do in order to get it, because that's the name of the game. They lose, they're out of the game. So in order to play the game, they have to play by the rules. They have to go find the money that they need in order to get their message across. They have to stack the deck so they gerrymander the district so that they get reelected every term. They have to be on the phone raising money all the time, and then they write rules to make it easier for them to do so and make it harder for somebody else to come in and take their jobs. Just like they have written rules to keep the third parties, the Libertarians and the Greens, out of the elections. They've set up this monopoly of debates in which only the two major parties can participate, effectively locking all other voices out of the election. And all we hear is more power to the state. Now, what that power is to be used for is always up for discussion. And so the Democrats have their list of things that they want to do and the Republicans have their list of things that they want to do with it. But ultimately, it is all the same. It's somebody's fighting to get their hands on that power, and then they want to take it and use it. It is this aspect of us that allows them to do it, where we have this desire for power and gain for ourselves as well. When was the last time you supported a policy or a program for the government or opposed one? Or you opposed one that would have benefited you, or supported one that wasn't going to benefit you? See, this is where they're coming from, is that what we're trying is that everybody only sees things from their own perspective, from their own lens of self-interest. And it keeps us from considering the views of the others, the needs of the others. And so we're fighting over this power. So either we change, or we have to emasculate the power at the top so that they don't have a reason to fight so hard over it. And that when they do get it, they can't do as much harm. Those are the choices that we have as individuals in making our decisions when we go to the polls. But in the long run, to build a better world, somehow or other, we humans have to get better. We have to move beyond where we are. We cannot go to the polls thinking about ourselves or thinking about our interest groups or our party or, oh my God, what's going to happen if the other guy gets in? This is guaranteed to keep us in conflict. It's guaranteed to keep us in a system of haves and nots, a system of built-in inequality. That's what capitalism is. It is a system of built-in inequality. I am not a social engineer. I'm not here to sit down and tell you that there's a better system or another system. I'm here to tell you that we need to change. We, the people, need to change ourselves so that we quit looking to government to get something for ourselves, and we figure out how to do it and create it another way. Because what we're doing when we look to government is we're forcing our friends and neighbors to pay for what we want. And they're trying to force us to pay for what they want. And so we get caught in this game where nobody gets along with anybody. And we're all in strife trying to carve out a little piece for ourselves. Well, we know what it's like at the bottom of the totem pole. The piece that you carve out isn't very big if you can get any at all. And those at the top, their pieces just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, how is it that the Clintons could come out of office in 2000? Not in a negative financial position. And now they're worth $150 million. How is it that Bill Clinton can get speeches that suddenly doubled and tripled in value as soon as Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State? How is it the people that Clinton did speeches for, like the Russian corporation that was involved in the uranium deals up in Canada, that Clinton could turn around and approve that Russians can get a 20% stake in a vital national interest? I'm not questioning whether uranium should be a vital national interest. That's a whole nother story. But what I'm saying is that we don't hold our leaders to higher standards, probably because we don't hold ourselves to higher standards. If we want to stop the games of power, we have to start looking beyond the standard mechanisms for putting people in place to run those, to exercise that power. We have to find a way to think about somebody other than ourselves. That doesn't mean to ignore our own needs, but to try to balance those needs with others. It doesn't mean going off and trying to set up policies to reverse all the harm that the progressives want to do. And believe me, a lot of that is necessary if the system continues to be one where it's a continual battle of who's going to benefit from the reins of power. And so they're trying to use the system to ameliorate the inequities of a capitalist system that says, you lose, too bad. And it's not fair that we should have a system like that. And it's probably right that if we're to be having these battles, that somebody should be giving some thought to those at the bottom. But you don't solve a problem by throwing a few crumbs down. You solve a problem by restructuring the entire system so that you take away the attractiveness of the nuisance. I spent 35 years practicing law, and there is a term that they have called an attractive nuisance that holds a property owner responsible when they create something that is so attractive that other people cannot avoid coming over there to see it and participate in it, like a swimming pool without a fence. So again, the law, in its wisdom, established that there was a liability to the property owner for creating this attractive nuisance that they knew or should have known that somebody would have come onto the property, that a child would have come on to swim in the swimming pool. So they had a duty to put a fence around it to keep the child from doing it. Well, this is what we have created in Washington and London and Moscow and Beijing and all the different seats of power around the world. We have created this attractive nuisance. We have created this system whereby all this power is going up to the top and working its way up the pyramid. And now everybody's fighting to get to the top of the hill so that they can be the one telling everybody what to do. I don't believe that the world that I want to live in is a world where I have to have somebody telling me what to do. I try to do the right thing. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't in my interests. And believe me, it's hard to make those choices, but I've tried to make them over the years. And and those who know me know that time and time and time again, I have made choices that were not in my favor because it was the right thing. And I'm asking you in this election season that you begin to think about what are your motivations for why you want the candidate you want. And if you are selecting a candidate, are you able to see all the flaws that come with them? And if so, why are those flaws acceptable to you? What is it within you that makes those situations okay? If you're a Hillary Clinton supporter, why do you accept the fact that she has clearly been enriched by all these people that are trying to gain influence and power and benefit from her position? And she has not been shy in the least in doing and using it for their and gaining for herself in the process. If you're a Trump supporter, how do you overlook the fact that he wants to build a wall between us and our nearest neighbor to keep us further separated, to stop a war on drugs that shouldn't have been there in the first place, that he wants to isolate us from around the world at a time when perhaps our leadership is necessary, or very disturbingly, reports from many, many years ago that he may have been involved in a rape or some other sexual misconduct offense. How do you overlook these things and still support someone for highest office where you want to give them all the power to do whatever they want? And you're going to hope that they're going to do the right thing for you. For myself, I've said from the beginning, before I looked at the stances of any of the candidates, that I could not support a candidate that was not an active proponent of peace in the world and was willing and ready to give back the power that it was obscenely given and seized by the federal government after these events in the past that, however seen, have been used to justify taking even more and more and more of our rights away. We are coming to a point in our world where we're going to have to make a choice. We're going to have to make a choice whether we stand up to power and we say enough is enough. You can't keep going on this way and enriching yourselves, and you can't have this power, and we can't have these continual battles over the power because we never get anything done. And then when it does get done, it's to the harm of one or more groups, usually of lasting harm in the course of our nation. We're coming to a point where these power games for the haves, between the haves, it's because they want to all be the have on top, and then everybody else becomes a have-not when it comes to the power. And the politics is the means by which all these people who are addicted to that power work to get it. And they've stacked the rules, and they have learned how to take legal bribes from those who would want to influence the affairs and skew them away from the national interest toward the interests of a chosen few. We're seeing a move in some areas where we're moving back toward more autocratic forms of government, where the people are just so splintered that they're almost demanding that somebody rule over them to make them be at peace, to treat each other civilly. But you know, we don't have to have that if we change. So we have a choice. We can change us and change our relationship to power and our relationship to using the system to get something for ourselves and to advance policies of our parties or policies of our friends or policies of our businesses that help our businesses. Or we can continue on the same way. And we know where it's going to go. And it doesn't matter who's holding the reins of power, because never do they pull back the power. They simply continue to expand it, giving them more reasons to fight the future and more reasons to try to hoard it over ourselves, and giving them more reasons to establish an empire around the world in order that they can assert their influence, assert their nation's influence, and that they can enrich themselves in whatever ways they feel necessary to be enriched. And I can't jump into the psyche of these individuals who want to be at the top in the power in these power structures, but I can tell you that they all seem to have some element that they think they're doing it for the right reasons, because they only see it their way. Well, maybe we have to let go of how we see it in order to consider the possibility that what we're doing isn't right. Our system needs to be changed. We all know that. The question is, can we here in the United States change it within the system, or do we have to do it the way our forefathers did? The powers that be are not going to relinquish power. They are not going to divest themselves of power, and they are not going to turn against their masters who are pulling their strings. They are going to continue on as long as we let them, push the buttons within us that provoke us and that get us to take their sides. Like, oh my God, I got to vote for Hillary because I can't stand to have Trump in. Oh my God, I got to vote for Trump because I can't stand for Hillary. And people think they're wasting their vote, even though they don't like either candidate. Would perhaps not your best bet, if you don't like the way the system is operating, is to stand up and say, listen, I'm not going to go along with your games anymore. It's either to show it and participate as a third party, or give power to the two major parties and let them keep on doing the same old thing. But if we don't find a way to change it, the problems that we're having, that we're seeing with the Black communities and the police, and the terrible relationships that have developed between them over the years, the surveillance of our national state, the setting up of the call about now Obama's called for a national police force on top of the FBI and Homeland Security and everybody else that we've got that we're paying for. Like we don't have enough people standing over us to keep us in line. They need more. Ladies and gentlemen, I just don't see a way that we're going to get out of this unless we stand up to ourselves, unless we change what we want. We cannot allow ourselves to play that game, because if we play that game, they'll continue to play their game. They are not going to change. So if you want the world to change, you've got to change yourself first. You have to find out why you support the power games as they are and what you can do to change you so that your attachment to that power is lessened. I can't tell you that it's going to be easy. I can't tell you that we're going to be successful at it. But what we have ahead of us as a people, as a species, is this effort to continually level the playing field. And if you've looked at history over the centuries, it has been where they have been, mankind has been slowly eroding the power bases at the top and trying to bring that power down from the kings and the queens and the popes down to the people. And ostensibly, that's the kind of system we have, where the sovereignty resides with the people. But the people have been manipulated. They have been lied to. They have been cheated and stolen from and oppressed. Yet we still keep coming back for more because we believe in the American dream. We believe in the possibility of a better tomorrow. We believe that what we do today can help make that tomorrow a better place, not just for ourselves, but for all of us. And somehow or other, we've got to find our way through this morass of human conditions, these inner factors within us that make up our egos and our desires and fears, and diffuse those so that those buttons cannot be pushed. And we manipulated to give up this power that came so hard to all of our ancestors. But right now, this is what's happening. We are giving back the power that we had. And it's not that far afield now to imagine that one day somebody could come in and use these powers against us and restrict our freedoms even more than they already are or have been. And it's not so much that we are living under oppression. We're not. I don't want to give that idea. But we're living under the possibility of it because we have empowered our government to use the power, the massive powers that we've given them. And with technology and weapons and the massive resources that we've given them, there's no way anyone can stand up to them. You've seen it in dealing with agencies like the EPA when they come in and condemn a piece of property and tell you you have to use it for wetlands. You can't develop on it, and you may have been using it for other purposes long before that, and they've come in and changed everything. It's not that those things are wrong. It's that if there's power, somebody's going to feel the need to use it. And if you want to end the politics of power that are keeping us in so much strife, you need to look at you. You need to understand why you get so upset at TV, why you get so upset when you look at the candidates and listen to their messages. Why do you get so upset when you look at the government and how it's acting and what it's doing and what it's not doing? And then try to figure out what you can do to shift yourself to see that in another way, or to say, what can we do to maybe not even have to do that at all? This whole series is on conscious leadership, but at the core of conscious leadership is a concept that I call conscious citizenship. In order to fight the politics of power, we must each become conscious citizens. And to be a conscious citizen, we must understand what's going on within us and how it relates to the world around us. We cannot continue to play the power games that we have and expect to have a world of peace or a world of possibility and opportunity for all. If we continue with the power games, we're going to continue to have some who win and some who lose. And those who lose are going to keep fighting back, and it's not going to be a very pleasant future to live in. I wish you Godspeed in your journey of awakening so that you can understand these things about yourself and perhaps make a difference in your world. I'm John Dennison. You can hear more about my work at missionlaunch.com, where we help those who are trying to make a difference change the world. God bless you indeed. Go with love.